Hey, welcome to Adventures with Peps. Today, this week on the Quick and Dirty Paint Scheme. I originally was going to try and paint a Salamander Space Marine, but as you will soon see, I had the wrong green, so it's become a Raptor. We start off with the Slaughter Red, and we're going to do the eye lenses. And whilst that's happening, we'll quickly do a bit about the Raptors. So they're a loyalist Space Marine, and a second founding successor of the Raven Guards. Their most famous campaigns obviously include the Badab War, the Third War of Armageddon, and the Taros campaign. Now, as I mentioned, this was meant to be a Salamander paint guide. I wasn't sure on what green I should use, so I picked this camo green, and the whole reason I picked it was pretty simple. If this was the wrong green, as it turned out, I'd have a Raptors paint scheme. Whilst if it was the right green, I'd have a Salamander paint scheme. So I'm still on the search for the correct green for Salamanders. But this is a beautiful Raptor scheme. So the chapter has almost been made extinct multiple times throughout their career. And they've had quite a few ups and downs through it all. But they are extremely brutal in the way they fight war. And they understand that war is not a heroic thing. It is not something to be proud of. It's not something to wear fancy medals. It's dirty. It's dangerous. It's brutal. They pretty much wallow in their own self-misery. They're almost the emo kids, but not wearing black. Instead, they're wearing green, which I think is perfect for a Raven Guard successor. During the Badab War, they sent quite a lot of companies, I believe 4 in total, and were in the running to actually be the Commander-in-Chief chapter of the conflict against the Tyrant Legions. But they lost out to the Red Scorpions. But they did it quite gracefully and ended up actually forging close ties to that chapter, which still lasts till today. Or today in their timeline, not ours. They are ultimately a covert strike force, and throughout the Badab War they spent a lot of time fighting behind enemy lines and trying to take on a lot of the Mantis warriors, who were probably the closest thing to their counterpart. But yeah, they participated in some of the heaviest fighting, and it did take a toll on the chapter, and by the end of the Badab War, the Raptors had lost nearly 60% of their original fighting force. Mostly to the Mantis warriors as well, which is really devastating for a chapter to lose that many of 4 companies. We do the classic dark wood paint for the leather, as you will now see. Yeah, they actually took so much damage during the Badab War that close to the end of it, they were deemed combat ineffective. They lost spaceships. They lost troopers, they lost weapons. They pretty much got their asses handed to them. And they had to stop fighting to allow the chapter time to rebuild. Which is crazy. The Inquisition ended up having to order them to withdraw from the war zone. And then off they went to the Ultima Segmentum. And that was about it. They keep a small force around the Maelstrom zone in hopes that they can fight the Red Coursers whenever they stick up their little ugly heads. And then after the Badab War, they headed off for the Third War of Armageddon, like many great chapter. And they fought along the Armageddon Orc Hunters and the Kachan Jungle Fighters. And then finally, for their current history, they are involved in the Taros campaign, which sees the Space Marines and the Imperial Guard facing off against the Tau and its Kroot allies. What I find funny about the Raptors is that they are pretty much the Mantis warriors, just from a different chapter. So the Mantis warriors came from, I believe, the White Scar gene seed, but both are very combat effective. They're both stealthy. They both excel at guerrilla warfare. They both enjoy using librarians to assist and get them ahead. It's quite funny that under any other situation than the Badab War, these two chapters would have been excellent allies with each other and would probably be very beneficial towards each other. So with the green and browns now all set in place, we move on to the Runic Gray, which by now, if you've watched enough videos, you know I love this instead of using metallic paint. So I'm going to hit up the combat knife, and I'm also going to catch any of the metallic that's on his, I guess it's a bolt pistol, or some sort of bolter weapon. I really prefer using this type of grey over a shiny metallic, especially on a covert team. I could actually imagine their weapons being more ceramic, so it doesn't catch the light or get picked up on metal detectors. This point I decided to touch up some details, so I'm using the pallid skull, which would be more for bones, I guess. I'm going to use that on his little scroll section, and once we have that on, we're going to pull out the slaughter red and use that on the actual wax seal. All we have left now is the grim black contrast paint. So as you can see, I'm going to use this on all the cabling and ribbing on his abdomen, behind the knees, in the groin area, and on the shoulder pads. This black is great. I just love it. It really darkens in the recesses, but the highest points don't go super grey. I'm always worried with a black speed paint that you're going to end up with grey patches. But this coats pretty well. You have to be careful because it does dry quick. So you have to make sure your coats are smooth and even. But beyond that, I do really like the black. It's up there with the slaughter red and the fire giant orange. And with a few final touches of the black paint, I think we're pretty much there. As you can see, I painted the cork. I just mixed the black speed paint with the brown speed paint and the grey speed paint, mashed it all together, slapped it on the base, and here he is in all his glory. I'm pretty happy with it. Yes, it's not the salamander I thought I was going to end up with, but look at him. I have a raptor. Well, I hope you enjoyed. Hope you'll drop me a like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll catch you next week.